All right, so today what we're going to do is figure out if we have an equivalent algebraic expression. So they say determine if the expressions 2 times negative 4y plus 3 minus 9 and y plus 3 minus 6 plus 9y are equivalent. And we need to explain why or why not. So the first thing we want to do is simplify our first expression. And remember that an expression means that we are not comparing it to anything else. We don't have an equal or an inequality sign. We just simply have our expression. So we have 2 times negative 4y plus 3, and then we want to subtract 9. So what we need to do is simplify it. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the parentheses. But before you can get rid of the parentheses, remember you're multiplying it by 2. Okay, so what we have is 2 times 4y, that gives us 8y. We look at our sign, so a positive 2 and a negative 4 is a negative. And just so that we remember, a positive times a positive is a positive. A negative times a negative is a positive. And if you have one of a kind, so a positive times a negative, that's a negative, or a negative times a positive, that is also a negative. So remember, two of a kind, whether it's positives or negatives, is going to be positives. And if you have one of a kind, then it's going to be a negative. So we have our 8y, which is negative, and then we have 2 times 3, which is 6. And then we have a positive 2, positive 3. That means that this is going to be a positive 6. And then we're going to subtract 9. Okay, so remember now we are using a column system, so we need to figure out how many bins or terms will we have. So we need one for our y values, and we'll also need one for our constants. Okay, so now we're going to place this under our y value. So this is negative 8y. And then we have plus 6, that's going to go under our constants. And then we have a negative 9, that will also go under our constants. So what we end up with is negative 8y. And we're going in different directions. So remember, you're going to use subtraction. So that's the same thing as saying 9 minus 6, right? So that will give us 3. And we always look at the larger number, which is the 9. And that is a negative. So that's the sign that we're going to attach to our 3. All right, so this is saying once we simplified that, we have negative 8y minus 3. And now we need to see if that is equivalent to the second expression that they've given us. So the second expression, I'll do it on a separate sheet of paper. So the second expression is going to be y plus 3. And then we're going to subtract 6 plus 9y. Okay, so same thing. We're going to simplify our expressions. First thing we need to do is get rid of our parentheses. Remember that if you don't see a number outside of the parentheses, it's the same as multiplying it by 1. If I'm multiplying it by 1, then I know I'm basically just going to have a repeat of what I had. Okay, and then over here, same thing. We don't see a number outside of the parentheses, so we're multiplying by 1. But I also notice that there is a negative before here. So what it actually means is that we're multiplying by negative 1. So everything inside of here is going to become opposites. We're going to use opposites. So let me show you what that would look like. Let's just ignore the negative for now, right? So we're just saying that it's 1. So that would be 6, and then we would have 9y. Okay, now because it is a negative 1, watch what happens. We have a negative times a positive, that becomes a negative. We have a negative times a positive, that becomes a negative. So notice that our 6 turns into a negative 6. Our 9 turns into a negative 9. That's because we're using the opposite. Because we have, instead of 1, a positive value, we have negative 1. So we're on the opposite side of the number line. All right, so now what are we going to do? We're going to look and see how many terms will we need, how many buckets or bins. So I see a y value, so I'll need a column for my y values. I see a constant, so I'll need a column for my constant. This will go under our constants, and this will go under the y values. All right, so what do we have? We have y, the 3 that goes over here. This is a positive, and if you want to, you can put the positive and negatives in front of it so that it makes sense for you when you get ready to simplify them at the end. So we have a 6 that goes under the constant. That's a negative. And then we have 9y. That's going to go over here in the y values. And then again, that's a negative. So now we're going to simplify those. So we have plus y minus 9y. So this is the same thing as plus 1y. So remember, if you don't see a number in front of your variable, it's the same thing as saying 1y. And the reason for that is look at how many y's you see here. You only see 1. Okay. So this is the same thing as saying positive 1 minus 9. So remember, they're going in opposite directions, so we're using subtraction. So that's the same thing as saying 9 minus 1. That gives me 8. Look at your larger number, which is the 9. It's a negative, so this needs to be a negative. So that's negative 8y. And then here we have a positive 3, negative 6, going in the opposite direction. So again, you're using subtraction. So that's the same thing as 6 minus 3. Our larger number 6 is negative, so that's going to be a negative. Okay, so what we have for our first expression and our second expression, let's look and see how they compare to each other. Are they equivalent? Well, we said that negative 8y minus 3, is that equal to, let me put them on the same levels. There we go. All right, so are they equal to each other? Negative 8y, minus 3, minus 3. So yes, they are equivalent to each other because they are the same values.